know when they got the new water?
We will definitely be notifying everybody when we do the
Did they
transition.
notice anything?
There may be some things we'll have to transition over. There'll be a small disruption in service. We'll probably be doing a lot of these transitions after hours. We may have to shut down their water service for a while, turn it back on. We'll be flushing the line. So it's good. And we'll be notifying all the individual neighborhoods. We'll be doing it in blocks in the neighborhoods. We'll be letting each neighborhood know when they'll be scheduled for and that they can be expecting an outage when that transition happens. We definitely have a good notification process in place. Following up the mainline crews, then we have the service crews coming in, connecting the fire hydrants, the new services, or transitioning the new services over, tying in the ends of the pipelines, that kind of thing. Oops, I'm sorry. There we go. Just to give you a couple of photographs of our construction work. This first one is the Tom Darlington Water Storage Reservoir site. It is located on the east side of Tom Darlington, between Leisure Lane and Meander Way. It is about 3/4 of an acre in size. And I don't think you can, I would point some things out with my cursor, but you can't see my cursor. So I'll have to talk you through it. The site is surrounded by, oh,
There it is.
oh, can you see it? Perfect. Thank you, Gary. The site is surrounded, as you can see, by construction fencing, and it's screened construction fencing. You can see on the far left-hand side of the site in this area here, which is the northeast corner of the site, that's our native plant nursery. That's where we've moved all the protected native plants to. You can see that orange you can barely see in the corner is some snow fence that we're using to tell people the construction crews stay out. These are our babies in there. That's our protected native plants, and that's where we moved everything to. You can see, of course, the middle of the site is dominated by our excavation. If you stand anywhere on the perimeter of that site, the bottom of the excavation is anywhere from 12 to 14 feet below the top of the excavation. So this definitely is a buried or underground water storage reservoir. This area right here is our driveway entrance off of Tom Darlington into the bottom of the water storage reservoir. Okay, what I've superimposed on this graphic, this area view right now, is the actual footprint of the Tom Darlington Water Storage Reservoir. It's 65 feet in diameter. You can see that the footprint of the water storage reservoir is somewhat smaller than the actual excavation. We do have a 12-foot track around the outside of the perimeter of the tank that will allow, it is post-tensioning equipment that will circle around the tank, the walls of the tank. We'll be wrapping a cable or wire around the tank under very high tension, which puts the concrete under compression. Concrete likes compression, it doesn't like tension. So you post-tension the walls of the tank with this wire and it puts it under compression. So that's why the excavations had to be a little bit wider than the perimeter of the tank. In fact, it's 12 feet on both sides, so the outside diameter of the excavation is about 90 feet in diameter. What we do need to remember is that a majority of the site is going to be refilled with soil. Soil will be placed within the excavation on top of the reservoir, and also within this island area that will help buffer us from Tom Darlington. This will be the majority of the area. The soil will then be revegetated with native Sonoran plants to help mesh it in and make it look like the adjacent open space area that it is within. That area definitely won't be this lush green of the golf course fairway. It is going to be more of a green native Sonoran desert that surrounds it.
Great. Will the excavation site, once construction, everything is complete and refilled and all that, will that continue to have a fencing around it to keep people out?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Delicio, no, we will not be fencing the entire site. The entire site will feel very open. The only thing that will not be, the only area that will be fenced and secured will be the utility area, which is in this part of the site right here. And another area that's not going to be revegetated is a circular driveway off of Tom Darlington, which will be in this area right here. Those are the only two areas that will be more secure. The rest of the area is going to feel very open. And at this point in time, we're not planning on fencing.
So Craig, one question. I think we remember we talked about salvaging the top layer of soil and then redistributing it once we got to the point where we were planting things. Did we do that?
Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman Crane, yes, we have. We took off the top 6 inches of soil. That soil is now over at the windmill site, which is the site that the town crew staged from. And so it's being stored there, and then we'll get to the point where we need to put it, refill the site. We'll bring that material over and put it on it as a top layer on the site.
So is this to scale? Because it looks really high when you look at it from this angle. So is it going to still be the same height as what was there before?
It will be slightly raised up. The top of the reservoir, it will be anywhere from, or the soil on top of the reservoir will be anywhere from 5 to 7 feet above the existing ground, the ground that was existing prior to building the reservoir. So it will appear like a mound, a slight mound in the desert. And
Well, when we had the before and after pictures, they looked like it was going to be exactly the same.
no, not exactly the same. It's close. I mean, it's a small mound, but there is a small portion that will be above the existing grade at the site.
5 to 7 feet.
Yes. And then it'll slope down from there to meet existing ground. So it'll appear like a small mound in the desert.
That'll be the top of the dirt.
That'll be the top of the dirt.
I thought it would be higher than that. I thought we'd be pushing 8 feet. 5 to 7 is even better than that.
Which way will it slope, Greg? Will it slope east, west, or is it equal?
Yeah,
all
it's equal. It slopes in a circular area around the tank. Because the tank is circular, it slopes down around it. We're going to undulate that side slope so that it appears more natural. It's not going to appear exactly uniform and geometric. We're going to make it undulate it a little bit. All right, switching over to pipeline construction. This is a photograph of rising sun taken from the west looking east. This is when we first started the Rising Sun pipeline portion of the project. You can see the massive effort needed to install a pipeline in the kind of beautiful Carefree area on both sides of this pipeline. Again, this is when we first started. So we started on the west side. We moved our way to the east. So right now we're finishing up out in this area out here.
Hey, Greg, it appears that the pipeline is not running adjacent to the road, it's actually under the road. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, yes, that is correct. The pipeline, in most of the installations we'll be doing, the pipe will be running underneath the roadway, not outside of the roadway, which in most pipeline installations we have in the town and throughout the municipal area, they do run under roadways.
Is there an easement on each side of the road that belongs to the city, on all the roads at Carefree?
There is typically an area outside of the edge of the pavement that is within right of way. Sometimes there are public utility easements out there too that do contain various utilities within them. That was an option that we considered, was installing it outside of the roadway, but in discussions with our contractor and with the topography that we have in the area and the native vegetation that we have, we felt like it was get easier construction and more cost-effective construction to be under the roadway than to be outside of the roadway.
Okay, just to add, this is an excellent representation of environmental bad on the street projects that was made. I remember the other examples where you go into the street, cuts and there's what needed to support that construction project. Surface the streets, we would be ripping up the bid. So that's why we held back. So when Greg's all done with this, we'll button up the streets.
And I would just add, if we had to go to the right of way, a lot of our residents wouldn't be happy because we'd be messing up their.
It just seems, obviously, it's more expensive to do it this way. It just seems like not for protection or anything, but it's probably 3-4 feet on the ground. But Peter's made, say the topography was a big driver on that. Right? So it just caught me off guard.
And Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, that topography, landscaping, disruption of people's yards, driveways are all considerations that factored into the decision of staying.
Sure.
Yeah, and actually, in the long run, it may be a cheaper alternative than going outside of the right of way because of those constraints, those things that you have to deal with.
I think I remember Aiken Gardner in one of their presentations talked about being on the roadway gave them a flat surface to work. If they go in the right of way, they're going to be tilted and angled. They felt their production would be higher being in the roadway. So the cost of the extra materials of redoing the road, cutting, would be offset by the fact they're going to get more pipe in the ground per day.
You know,
I think it was a more efficient solution.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, great. What percent of the pipeline will we be reusing? Cave Creek pipeline, what percent is totally new?
Mr. Chairman, we
Roughly.
have about 25,000 feet of new pipeline that we will be installing. We will be using a considerable amount of existing Cave Creek or pipeline that's currently used by Cave Creek. I have not totaled up what that is, but definitely much more than the new pipeline will be installing. In fact,
And that's what you're going to be flushing and
correct. All right, this is a graphic, shows you these two pipeline projects that are near term. They both support the transition of neighborhood C onto the Carefree Water Company system. One thing I wanted to point out about the Rising Sun pipeline improvements, which is this area here, which is the first pipeline that we've constructed. This is all within the current or existing Carefree Water Company service area, about 2,500 feet. So it's all an improvement for the existing customers. It's bringing water into this neighborhood here that has never had potable water service to it. There are no water lines in this area here, and we're also bringing fire protection into this neighborhood, putting in 4 hydrants, fire hydrants in the area. There's a fire hydrant at the end, at the west end of Rising Sun, a fire hydrant at the east end, but nothing in the middle. So we're also installing fire hydrants for fire protection. So a big benefit to our existing service area and existing customers and residents within Carefree in this area.
How big is the water?
A lot of these residents out in this area are on wells. And if their wells run dry or any new customers that come, in fact, I know these 2 parcels right here are being sold and could potentially be developed in the near-term future. They're very interested in tying in to our new potable system. So once our crews are done, then they're right at this point here at the far east part of the Rising Sun Pipeline Improvement Project. Once they're done, hopefully by the end of the week, they'll be moving over to Scopa Trail and starting on the southwest corner of that project and moving our way to the northeast along Scopa Trail. All right, in honor of spring training and this hopeful eventual start of the baseball season, I've got the Carefree WCP Water Consolidation Project Scorecard. Do realize that we are at the beginning of the project, so some of these numbers will be low, but as far as pipelines, we've installed about 2,500 feet of pipeline along Rising Sun, out of a total of 25,000 lineal feet of pipe. So we're at about the 10% level right now. Reservoir is completed. We have one reservoir on tap. It's not completed yet, so 0 out of 1, but we are about 25% complete on the water storage reservoir. As far as the booster pump station improvements, we have one booster pump station improvement plan, Peaceful Place, in our existing service area. It has not been started yet, so we're at 0% on that. Meter replacements, we are replacing all of the meters within neighborhoods A, B, and C. We're taking out the Cave Creek meters, we're putting in Carefree meters. About 110 of those meters have been replaced up to this point. All the meters in neighborhood C and about 30 meters in neighborhood B have been replaced. Out of 535 total, we're at about 20%, just over 20% of the meters have been replaced. That work is being done internally by our Carefree Water Company field crews. They're doing, our field crews and our office staff are doing a yeoman's job of getting these things replaced. They're saving us a lot of money, so we can pay our contractors, so we can pay our consultants. They're doing a great job. They're out there. They've had to clean out the meter boxes. They're replacing the meters, putting new meters in, talking to the residents, getting them forewarned about what's to come, that the transition is to come. What's happening with these new meters is that they're Carefree Water Company meters that are in place, but Cave Creek Water is still going through those meters. So we are reading these meters that we've replaced. We are giving the data to Cave Creek, and they're still billing these customers. When the customers have transitioned over to Carefree Water, then we'll keep that meter data, put it in our billing system, and bill these new customers. As of today, no customers have been transitioned over yet, but within the next month to 2 months, we do expect to start transitioning over some of the customers within neighborhood C, kind of our first neighborhood that we're focusing on.
Hey, Greg, all those new meters, those are the ones you just drive by and you can read all the data.
That's
Got the
correct.
whole town, right?
Yeah, pretty much the whole time. Probably 95% of our meters are drive-by meters. And then we have the optional service of Ion Water, which is a cellular program that we have that the meters actually transfer. Now we're down to about 4 times a day. They transfer the water usage data to the cloud, so people can actually have nearly immediate access to their water use via tying in with the cloud. It is an optional service. It does cost $240 for 10 years of service, but we will be offering that to our new customers in neighborhoods A, B, and C also. So we've got those 2 programs going on. Normal meter installation, we would drive-by meters, and then optional service would be our Ion Water service. All right, now switching gears, that's kind of the update on our water consolidation project. Switching gears to the matter at hand, which is the Tom Darlington water storage reservoir. Just to give you a little bit of background and where we are. Back on November 2nd of last year, of 2021, the board did approve GMP A1, guaranteed maximum price A1 for site preparation. Unfortunately, because of litigation, we had about a 4-month delay in starting that work, but we did get that those litigation issues taken care of, and we did issue a final notice to proceed on that work to Aiken Gardner on February 14th of this year. That work included native plant salvage, clearing and grubbing, excavation and hauling that excavation site that you saw on the aerial photograph, and miscellaneous site preparation work. All that work under GMP A1 is completed and is done. That led us to change order number 1 under GMP A1. That change order work was approved administratively by me on March 17th of this year in the amount of just over $260,000. $65,000, $265,938.26. It is a little bit more than I would like to see under a normal change order process. I did not do this in a vacuum. I did consult with Chairman Peterson and with Gary Neese, and we felt that it was important to keep the work on the water storage reservoir going so we could get this GMP2 that you'll be considering tonight approved, and we could have a seamless transition into construction of the concrete water storage reservoir that would start as early as possible, and it will be starting on Monday if approved tonight. What work was covered under change order number 1 includes under slab piping. There's 3 pipes that will be penetrating the slab and need to go under the slab. So Aiken Gardner needed to excavate for that piping and needed to encase that piping in concrete. All that piping work is done. They needed to, or they are doing in the process right now of laying the foundation base, the aggregate base course or ABC. A foot of that, that's what the foundation, concrete foundation will be poured on. And they needed to compact that material, that laying of the foundation and compacting the material is currently being done. Also needed to prepare the track, that 12-foot track around the water storage reservoir, because it is a fairly big piece of equipment that pulls the tension on those wires and those cables and puts the tank under compression. That needed to be done. And then of course they needed to maintain the site with the traffic control, with the dust control, those kind of things that need to be done at a construction site. All that work is in progress right now and nearing completion, which leads us to GMP, or guaranteed maximum price, A2, for the actual construction of the concrete portion of the water storage reservoir, which will include the pouring of the foundation slab, pouring of the sidewalls at the site. Those sidewalls will be poured in a horizontal form. They'll then let them cure and then tilt them up in place. There'll be sidewall panels, and they'll tilt those panels up in place, put a water stop then in between each of the panels, and they'll do this post-tensioning that we talked about, this wire spiral wrapping of the full concrete water storage reservoir. And of course, there'll be support columns inside the reservoir so that we can put a roof on top of it and pile earth material on it and revegetate on top of it. And also it would be rated for any kind of construction equipment that might have to be up on top of the reservoir during construction. The subcontractor who will be doing the work is DN Tank. They're kind of the premier concrete water storage reservoir contractor throughout the nation. They will be overseen by our construction manager on the project, who is Aiken Gardner. And Aiken Gardner will also be doing site maintenance, maintaining the driveway down into the bottom of the water storage, the excavation for the water storage reservoir. They'll be doing dust control, be doing all the traffic control. That's included all in the GMP A2. Some particulars of this GMP, this guaranteed maximum price. It will be the contract for this work will be under Construction Services Contract C 2022-01. So the first contract we've entered into in the new calendar year. It will be with our CMAR, our construction manager at risk, who is Aiken Gardner, on the entire project. The term of this construction work is 126 days, or about 4.5 months, in an amount not to exceed just over $1.8 million, $1,821,104.23. And the authorization to enter into this contract will be done via the approval of Resolution 2022-01, which is again the first resolution of the new calendar year. Some of the benefits of approving this, before we move into questions, is that it does allow us to utilize these specialized concrete crews. Some of these crews are in the valley currently, They're working on a reservoir in Scottsdale and other places around the valley before they head north as the weather starts to get better up in the northern climates. We do feel like we can also get a bulk of our critical concrete pours done before the heat sets in, which is important because that saves us money. We also feel it gives us a seamless transition through the project. We finished GMPA1, which was site preparation. We then transitioned pretty seamlessly into the change order work, change order number 1 that we talked about. Then with the approval of GMP, which is under discussion tonight, we then could seamlessly, hopefully transition from the change order work to GMP A2 work, which is the construction of the actual concrete water storage reservoir. Do know that there will be one more guaranteed maximum price coming in front of the board for the finalization of the Tom Darlington water storage reservoir, and that will be A3. That will be for site regrading, and landscaping and installation of all the equipment that's needed in the utility area. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you have, and after questions, I have a recommended motion on the screen.
I have a few questions. So once they commence work, especially pouring the concrete, will they just do it in the daytime or will they do it 24/7? These are the kind of questions we might be asked.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Crane, I'm expecting that most of the concrete pours will be scheduled during normal working hours at this point in time. And unless we get into an unusually hot, late spring, early summer, I'm expecting most of the concrete pours to be during the day, during normal working hours. If we
Excuse
do
me,
it-
Greg, it's my understanding, are they slabs that they're pouring and then they're going to put those in place? Is that how it's going to work as opposed to a single pour or?
Mr. Chairman, the foundation, the bottom concrete slab will be poured in place. That'll be the floor of the water storage reservoir. And the side walls will be poured on site in forms, kind of partially circular forms. I don't know how many there's actually going to be, but those will be allowed to cure on site and then tilted up and then put around in a circular fashion around the water storage reservoir with water stops in between them. And that's what will be then post-tensioned. So those slabs will be poured, or those sidewalls will be poured separately and individually. Then the columns will be poured separately. And then the roof, I'm not exactly sure about the roof pour. I'm gonna have to find out about that. But yeah, so it will be done in pretty manageable segments. Probably the largest pour is going to be the concrete foundation or floor slab, which will be coming up fairly quickly after approval of GMP2. And we'll be working on the sidewalls, and then obviously the roof will come last.
We have a fleet of cement trucks coming. Or we don't
Yeah,
have cement right there.
The contractor and subcontractor did let me know that it's a challenging time out there and to get commitments to have concrete deliveries. You had to really work with the suppliers to make sure that they were guaranteeing that we would have the concrete necessary to complete these pours. And that also came at somewhat of a premium.
Greg, is there any, there's something this heavy localized like that? Do they drive down to the rock soil or not needed?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, we actually had some great geotechnical work done on the site. We sited the water storage reservoir, and it turned out to be a very excellent location. We are down about 12 to 14 feet. We've had the geotech come out, and pretty much right below us is hard material, hard bedrock. We did not have one bucket full of hard dig for the entire excavation of the water storage reservoir, which was amazing. I expected us to run into at least some. Now, that's not the case with the pipe that's gone underneath that's going underneath the slab. So a lot of that has been heart dig. But the bulk of the excavation for the water storage reservoir, the geotech work that we did up front has panned out, and it said it was a good site for the construction and installation of a water storage reservoir. And yeah, the excavation that we've done has borne that out.
Can you tell us if there's already an existing feed line into that whole community right by the tank?
There's an existing water line. Let me go back to the
Service line or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. There's an existing 10-inch water line that cuts across the site on the north side, right in this area right here. Comes out to Tom Darlington. I believe it crosses the road and turns south. And so that's the existing water line that will be tying into, that will feed into the reservoir. So it's just on the perimeter, on the north perimeter of our site.
Or you use that to feed water to replenish?
Exactly.
Well, it really is interesting, having been there personally to see everything that's going on. I mean, Steve, I encourage you to take a drive over there when Greg's there and he can show you
Yeah.
firsthand everything. And it really
I took
is
some pictures,
amazing.
but it was in the early days of the
Oh, okay.
digging.
Yeah.
Big. Needless to say.
So Greg, just out of curiosity, because I used to build concrete bolts as a kid, that they, water valves, transformers, that kind of stuff. How do they seal the panels, the elliptical panels? Well, you've got a floor you're gonna pour. So you gotta have a water stop where they seat, right? And then water stops at the seams of the panels. I'm just curious.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Johnson, that's exactly right. They use water stops at all of these locations, and the water stops will be embedded in the concrete. Definitely at the foundation, and where these panels will sit on the foundation, there's going to be water stops. There'll be water stops in between each individual panel. I think they also will inject a material, water stop material in these areas to make sure all the voids are filled. So all of these places that have the potential for having, openings and non-barrier areas there'll be a water stop type material placed in them. So it's a watertight facility.
Will they seal the inside of the tank itself?
They do, I believe, rely on the water stops. I believe at the seams, we have another water storage reservoir that's this type of design. And I believe there is some water seal that they put around, say, the bottom perimeter of the inside of the tank. But really, the main water stop, main seal is that internal water stop ring that they place the individual panels on.
Thank you.
Somehow the vision that pops up in my mind is a barrel with, I don't know if you call them staves around it that wedge it together. Is that,
Mr. Chairman, that's a very good analogy because, that's what, and if you think of that barrel, instead of being wood, it's concrete, and think of just cinching those metal rings around the barrel, cinching them down as tight as you can. That's exactly what we'll be doing with this water storage reservoir and this equipment. We'll just be putting that concrete under compression. Really interesting.
Proven technology.
It is.
Tens of thousands of these reservoirs
Yeah.
are in service all over the country. Your concrete wants to be in compression and your steel wants to be in tension, and that's exactly what you get.
When we get to that point, I think it would be appropriate to kind of get an open invitation to the board because that's the amazing part of it, to see that post-tension taking place. Obviously, you all can't be out there at once, but maybe 3 at a time, so we don't have a quorum. We'll take you out. You can witness this post-tension, which is a really amazing part of the construction.
interesting?
This is my last question, and this might be well beyond our lifetimes, but how long do these how many years are these intended to last before major renovations or maintenance?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Delicio, typical life cycle estimates for a concrete water storage reservoir like this is anywhere from 50 to 100 years. And that's probably being pretty conservative. These concrete water storage reservoirs are heck for stout. And, but there are things that, you know, that do take place. You do need to maintain them. You do need to clean them out. You know, there's rebar within the concrete that can rust. So they're not, you know, not completely bulletproof, but they're pretty bulletproof. They're a very good water storage reservoir material.
Is there a coating that goes on the inside to protect it from bacteria and so forth, so it don't maintain its drinkability?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, that's a good question. I've been meaning to look into that. I always thought that our existing underground concrete water storage reservoir, the 1,000,000-gallon tank, did not have an internal coating. But I've been told that there is an internal coating, so I need to look into that, whether there is going to be an internal coating on this or not. I believe there may be an internal coating that they put.
I know that this is a water system that, like this, a few households, even the gauges and all the instruments, all the sensors, everything has to be a special material that's not impacted by bacteria because it's affected.
Everything that comes in contact with the water by ADQ, the Department of Environmental Quality requirements, has to be NSF, National Science Foundation certified for potable water. So everything has to meet NSF 6061 requirements. And so that's a requirement of water storage reservoirs, of pipeline systems, anything that comes in contact with water. So yeah, there's an approval process for anything that would go be in contact with the water.
Just one last question from that. What can go wrong? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's a leak. But is there anything else that?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, what could go wrong? You know, probably the biggest concern for any kind of water storage reservoir is leakage. Is leaking, and that's why there's a lot of water stops. That's a really critical piece of the construction. Also having good pours, you know, making sure that the concrete is good, meet your quality standards, your requirements, that there are no air pockets in your concrete. So all of those things are guarded against by quality control, quality assurance testing, having inspectors out at the site. We have, you know, construction administration and inspection, out at the site inspecting these things to make sure that that it is constructed per the specs and standards. And that's why we hired the contractors and subcontractors that we have working on this, because they're very qualified subcontractors and contractors. They know what they're doing. They've done these things.
Okay, no further questions or discussion. Would accept a motion to vote to approve construction services contract number C2022-01 with Aiken Gardner for a guaranteed maximum price. I believe the contract number is A2 for the construction of the Tom Darlington Water Storage Reservoir as part of the Carefree Water Consolidation Project. And I believe the total price is $1,851,821.
821.
So I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2022-01.
I'll second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Cheryl?
Candace, would you please poll the council?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, is that it? That's it? Thank you. Bye. Go ahead.
Oh, yes,
Aye.
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 Motion, was that Cheryl on the phone with you?
Yeah.
Motion passes by unanimously 7-0. So with that, we go on to item number 6. Cheryl usually leads us in the motion for adjournment. But this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. And thank you, Greg. I think with all the things that are going on, you're doing an absolutely outstanding job.
Great job.
Yes.
Thank you, board.
Only